Welcome to the historic Cape Coast. Roughly 600 years ago, Cape Coast was nothing more than a small fishing village consisting of about 20 houses. The Portuguese were the first to discover the little settlement. Sailing past in 1471, they called the village Cabo Corso, meaning Short Cape. Its corruption to Cape Coast is now the accepted name of the capital of the central region of Ghana. The town that grew around the castle supplied labor to merchants, supplementing the castle's own enslaved workers. In addition, relationships between European men and African women led to a significant biracial population around Cape Coast. These individuals served in military units, learned skilled trades, and provided a bridge between European and African cultures. When Cape Coast Castle's commerce became increasingly dependent on supplying slave cargoes, the fort added dungeons to hold large numbers of captives. In doing this, the castle's merchants could outfit ships more quickly, at higher prices, and with greater profits. The castle is reputed to have been one of the largest slaveholding sites in the world during the colonial era, where slaves, many of them traded to the British by Ashantis in return for alcohol and guns, were stored before being stowed in merchant ships and deported. The first fort established on the present site of Cape Coast Castle was built by Hendrik Kerlof for the Swedish Africa Company. In 1650, Kerlof succeeded in getting the permission of the King of Fetu to establish a fort here. Finally erected in 1654, this lodge was built with timber, but a year after, it was replaced with stones and mud and named Fort Carolusberg after King Charles X of Sweden, and became the structural base for the Cape Coast Castle. In 1664, during the prelude to the Second Anglo-Dutch War, the castle was conquered by a British fleet led by Captain Holmes in a short 4-day battle. The English reinforced the fort, which they named Cape Coast Castle. It was the English who made a significant impact on the architecture over the next 300 years that they lived here. In 1844, the Cape Coast Castle became the seat of the colonial government of the British Gold Coast. In the 1870s, the castle became the headquarters of the West Indian Regiment. Between 1760 and 1780, the Cape Coast Castle was reconstructed in stages to its present form, a loosely pentagonal fort with low curtain walls, several polygonal bastions, and 3-story ranges of buildings around a courtyard, and covered an area of about 3,900 square meters. It was expanded landward and seaward, using both local and imported materials in its construction. The castle was built with granite stones, which were quarried from this very site, also known as Secondian stones. Remnants of it can still be found where the Atlantic Ocean washes the rocks in front of the castle. The expansion of the castle was necessitated by the growth of the slave trade, which between 1700 and 1807 constituted 90% of business on the Gold Coast. It was also therefore equipped with 3 slave dungeons, 2 for males, 1 for females, from where some 70,000 slaves were exported to the New World each year. The average age was between 13 and 30, and so children from age 10 and above and adults of 40 and above were taken away. Even old men with gray hair were shaven, and they were polished with palm oil to make them look strong and healthy. A strong man of about 30 years would go for about 12 guns, about 4 kegs of gunpowder, 6 bottles of whiskey or schnapps, some second-hand clothes, blankets, brass bowls, knives, earrings, bracelets, and many things in a package. The buyer then smeared the upper right arm of the captive with palm oil, and then he was branded with a hot metal, on which had been embossed with the initials of the merchant, agent, or company. The male slave dungeon is a dark dungeon made up of 5 interconnected chambers, and it was designed for 1,000 slaves. But as the trade went on, it was taking over 1,500 slaves. The dungeons had thick stone walls with only a small opening in the bricks, 10 feet up, providing them with light and ventilation. From the hatch door at the top of the slope that leads into the dungeon, a soldier supervised them. Sometimes food was thrown in from there, so they struggled for it here in their feces. Water also came in from here, and they cupped their hands to drink or suck each other's hair for water. They stayed in here for about 3 months on the average. They urinated here, they defecated here, and they vomited, ate and slept here. When the slaves went out to be embarked, the cells were not cleaned, but the sand was thrown over the excrement and blood before the new group of slaves entered. The conditions in the dungeons broke the warrior spirit of the men, many of whom were captured soldiers, and left them too weak to organize revolts. So by the time the ships arrived, they would be more docile on the transatlantic journey. It was not until the early 1970s that the castle dungeons were excavated and gutter tracks were found running throughout the chambers. The excavation also revealed bones, shackles, branding instruments, and some ropes. Many slaves got sick and died here. This room also served as the sorting room, where when the ships arrived, the slaves were grouped according to their owners. The slaves were then led out through a tunnel to awaiting ships through the door of no return. This was the end of the male slave dungeon tunnel. On the left and right sides are the female slave dungeons. Ahead was the passageway called the door of no return, because anyone who went through it never came back. It used to be a small door that allowed one person out at a time. They waited in line till they got a sizable group. Then they were marched through that door, through which slaves were led to the beach and from there to slaving vessels waiting offshore. This was done mainly in the night, so that the residents here would not see what was happening, though they knew, because there were reports of screaming, wailing, and stamping of feet. The Royal African Company was exporting some 70,000 slaves per annum to the West Indies, North America, and England. 4 in 10 never survived the tortuous transoceanic voyage, crammed barely alive in the hull below the deck.